Hello and welcome to this video in which we'll be looking at the Mega CD from Sega. On the 23rd of September 2018 I will be 34 years old, and while the Mega CD is only 27 years old, I thought it would be quite appropriate to tie in a sort of birthday video, as I bought a Mega CD as an early birthday treat. The Mega CD you'll see in this video set me back about £70, which is around $90 US, which is good value. We'll start by looking at the Mega CD hardware. So here we have the Mega CD Mark II. The Mega CD, also known as the Sega CD, was released in 1991 in Japan, 92 in North America, and 93 in Europe. Essentially adds a CD drive to your Mega Drive and allows playing of Mega CD games as well as audio CDs as well. There were a couple of versions of the Mega CD. There was a version 1 which sits underneath the Mega Drive, and here we have the Mark II as mentioned, where the Mega Drive sits on the left. This does support both models of the Mega Drive, version 1 and 2, but for this demonstration I'm going to be using model 1. So as we can see, all we need to do is plug the Mega Drive into the side, like so. There we go, into the expansion port, and that's it really. The Mega Drive gets its own power supply as normal. The Mega CD also has its own power supply. Then you connect a controller to the Mega Drive and an AV cable at the back. This is not official AV cable, which is something I had laying around that was compatible. And that's it. When you turn on the Mega Drive, it powers up the Mega CD. But let's have a bit more of a look at the Mega CD itself. So this already has fitted like an extension to support the original model of the Mega Drive. Looking at the back, we see the power supply connection. We have this mixing jack and two RCA audio connections, which cause a lot of confusion. From my understanding, because the original Mega Drive model only had mono audio through the AV port and stereo through the headphone port, you could run a cable from the headphone jack of the Mega Drive to this mixing cable jack, and the Mega CD would mix the audio from the Mega Drive with the Mega CD, and then you could get stereo from here. But it's very confusing, and people keep saying lots of different things. I will just experiment. I think you should just experiment yourself and see what is the best setup, because you can just plug an amp into the headphone socket of your Mega Drive. So as mentioned, the Mega CD needs its own power supply, the Mega Drive needs its own power supply, and if you have a 32X as well, it needs its own power supply. And if you have a TV, which of course you probably will have a TV or monitor, that's another connection you need to make. There is a solution, and the modern thing people do is use a high power supply to power everything. But while I was looking into this, I realised I already have a suitable power supply, and it might surprise you. So I am using the Slimline PlayStation 2 power supply. This is rated at 8.5 volts, 5.65 amps. It's more than powerful enough to power everything. And I'm going to go into detail on a separate clip about how the power supply works, just briefly, just to explain how this works and why it's better for your system to use a modern lower voltage power supply. So at the end of the Slimline PlayStation 2 power supply, you've got this connection which actually plugs straight into Mega Drive Model 2 and powers it no problem anyway. For some reason Sega made use a smaller connection for the power on the Model 2 Mega Drive, and they reversed the polarity as well for Model 1. But anyway, that would fit straight in and power it. But as for powering everything else, it's just a matter of making up an adapter cable. This is a bit makeshift, but it demonstrates. So this is like from a laptop connector. That's what the PS2 power supply fits in, and then I just spliced together various cables. So you have one for the Mega Drive Model 1, one for the Mega CD Model 1, and one if I want to use the Mega Drive Model 2 instead. So that's it. That's a quick look at the Mega CD. We'll be looking at the power supply in a bit more detail, and also some games as well. I mentioned previously the confusion of the Mega CD's audio options, but after testing I can now explain the advantage of using the Mega CD's mixing input. When playing a Mega CD game, some sounds are generated by the Mega Drive, aka Genesis, itself, usually sound effects such as sonic jumping in the example of Sonic CD, but typically music will come from the Mega CD. If you connect a standard TRS audio cable between a Mega Drive 1 headphone port and a mixing port input of the Mega CD, the Mega Drive's volume slider will control the volume of Mega Drive generated sounds if you take the audio from the Mega CD's line-out connections. Without the mixing cable, you cannot control the volume of the Mega Drive generated sounds if using the Mega CD line output ports. So, in summary, the mixing cable just gives you a little bit of mixing control over Mega Drive generated sounds. So let's now talk briefly about how the power supply works in the Mega Drive and Mega CD. So you'll probably be familiar with the power supplies, which are those big bulky power supplies, which will just represent like here. And these are 10 volts, and I believe there are 9 volt ones as well. So what happens is inside the Mega Drive we have a 7805 voltage regulator. By the way, I'm drawing looking through the camera, so I'm not seeing it in real time, so this is a bit tricky. Anyway, so what a 7805 does, it simply takes an input voltage and essentially converts it to 5 volts, which is used by the rest of the system. There's also a diode, which presumably is to protect against reverse polarity, not that that should normally happen, and we lose 1 volt across here. So let's say this is 10 volts. So it becomes 9 volts. Now these voltage regulators need about 7 volts to be able to output, that is, regulate to 5 volts. So obviously it's 9 volts, that's fine, okay? Now if you use the PS2 power supply, which is 8.5 volts, you lose a volt across the diode. 7.5 volts, absolutely fine. Now the problem with these linear voltage regulators is they essentially convert the input voltage to the output voltage by losing energy as heat, which is not efficient at all. So the idea is the lower the input voltage you use, in theory the less heat generated and the better for the system. But whether it is actually better, the main thing is that the lower voltage is perfectly acceptable. Now if we go on to the Mega CD, it's a little bit more complicated but still interesting. So we've got 7805 again, that is the 5 volts out, but instead there's this switch that consists of 2 transistors like so. Okay, and then it has its own power supply input. Now we have the expansion connector over here, and that 5 volts goes to there, and the Mega CD can detect that. So essentially when you turn on your Mega Drive, it puts 5 volts on the expansion connector, the Mega CD detects it, and it allows its own input voltage to be routed to the regulator, and the system turns on. Now there's one last thing to mention, and that's inside the Mega Drive, it does tap into this input power supply and puts it into the expansion connector, but nothing seems to use it. I think it was going to be used by the floppy drive add-on for the Mega Drive. Yes, you heard that right. That might have used the 9 volts DC. Again, the Mega CD does something similar and taps into the input voltage, routes it to somewhere else, but I can't see, it doesn't seem to actually be used. But that's a quick look at the power supply. I thought it was interesting, and I wanted to explain how the PS2 power supply is actually better for your systems. Thanks for watching. For more information about the Mega CD, please see my site linked in the video description below. Happy gaming. Bye for now. Bye.